Sorry.
Hello. Oh, turn that down a bit, please. All right. Good morning again, everyone. Thank you for coming. A few announcements before we start. So we're going to have a bit of a day ahead of us. We have some breaks scheduled in, but we don't want this to be like you're sitting in class at a lecture. So please feel free, get up and get food, go back and sit at the tables, use the restroom, do what you need to do. This does not need to be overly formal. Also, please take time to look at the beautiful Miami Oda piece, which tickets are still for sale. I know you kind of have to see it in person to really get it. I know when I saw the image on the website, it looked beautiful, but when I saw it in person, especially with Hoshin's beautiful frame, that's when I bought a ticket. So, please buy tickets. Time to buy tickets will end later today, so get in on that while you can. Later this evening, after the ceremony, we will all be going out to eat. We have reservations at a few restaurants. People are responsible for their own dinner, but we just want to make sure everyone has a seat if they want it. So we do have sign-ups for each restaurant. I think we have 35, 15, and 15 at each place. Books over here, the new book is for sale. We can take online checks or cash. Cash will have to be exact change though, or exact change plus Donna. We just can't make change right now. They're $20, so we try to have that a round bill. See me or Fusatsu or David Thompson if you want to get a book, and we can make that happen for you. And it is signed by Hojo-san, yes. So, with that, Fusatsu, do you want to say a few things before we start?
I think you've hit everything. But thank you all. We're super excited to have everyone here. So please enjoy the weekend.
Okay, so we're going to go ahead and get started. We have a few speakers to begin. I'm going to let Gene do a short introduction, and then we're going to hear from Eijo about Sanshin in relation to Soto Zen as a whole, and then we're going to hear from Hoshin about the history of Sanshin, and then we're going to have a panel about Sanshin going forward. So Gene, if you want to go ahead.
Sawyer, can you turn me up? Good. Whoa! I guess so. Well, good morning. Thank you. First thing I want to do is thank Hatsu, wherever you disappeared to, and Michael for such an excellent job, and the whole crew. Carla, you guys have done absolutely great. Thank you very much. So, I just want to talk two quick stories, as Hoko knows. I'm always in sets of two. One, and both of them have to deal with karma and connectedness. The first, when I got associated with Sanshin, I had just finished my second reading of Zen and the Article Motorcycle Maintenance by Robert Persick, which is really a memoir and about rhetoric. And it had a little bit of Zen. I said, wow, that's really interesting. The very day I finished it, I go out to get my mail. There's a thing from Ivy Tech that says, hey, they're teaching a course in Zen by this person named Hoko. I signed up immediately. Been hooked ever since. So that's one story. The other story has to do with my friend Neil in the back there. I was standing in line. This is a weird story. I was standing in line for food, and I just caught this phrase, and we have a small Sangha in South Bend. And for all those who don't know, this is Michigan, this is Indiana. South Bend's up on top, about 3 or 4 hours away from here. And so he said he's from South Bend, and I said, well, let me introduce myself. I was born and raised in South Bend. Even though I lived in California for 30 years, and I've been back here for 12, I was born and raised in South Bend. He says, well, where? I said, well, there's a little street called Marquette, off Portage. And he goes, Marquette? I said, yeah, Marquette Boulevard? I said, well, yeah, Marquette Boulevard. And he says, where on Marquette? And I said, well, where do you live on Marquette? And he goes, 1326. That was my address for 17 years. I was born in that house. Born in that house. Karma. Connectedness. What more can you ask for? And I have a little bit of agoraphobia, so I have not been away from my property in Brown County very often, but I am so glad for the November period that I had in LA and for Day. Thank you.
Okay, now I'd like to invite AJ McMullen up to speak about Sanshin and Soto Zen.
Good morning. I am going to set a timer because I was a school teacher for a long time, which means I can open my mouth and then it never stops. My name's Ejo McMullen. I'm the abbot of a small temple in Oregon, Eugene, Oregon, called Buddha Eye Temple, and I've also been involved with the Soto Shu for many years. My official title is the Assistant Director of the Soto Zen North America Office. Some of you might know that as the Sokanbu. So the Sokan, who many of you know, was here earlier. He just got in on a flight at 6:30, so he's resting a little bit and will join us later. So in his stead, I'm making a few comments. So what I find at my temple is when I'm there, it's hard for me to imagine the importance of what we do at our temple for the wider Soto Zen community in North America. We're just doing our thing. We're practicing hard. We're taking care of each other. We're taking care of the Dharma. And so I imagine that's probably true at Sanshinji as well, although your limbs spread out much farther than our temple in Eugene. But I want to assure you that the work of Sanshinji is not just about what you're doing here at Sanshinji, but it is an unbelievable support to the larger Soto Zen world, in particular Soto Zen world in North America. Of course, Okumura Roshi is one of the great ancestors of Soto Zen in North America, and we all owe him and his family a great debt for the work that they have done over many decades to plant seeds here and to water them and to bring the Dharma to all of us. And of course, for many of us, that comes through the translation work, from the scholarship, from the teachings, the bendoes, and I have not been to one, but I have some recordings, and that's really great. And many of my colleagues I know really have benefited from that so deeply. And then, of course, the temple and the temple community of Sanshinji. Those are all fantastic and important. But I would say the more important thing is the students. So the students that this community, and particularly your teacher, has cultivated over a long period of time is the biggest support to Soto Zen in North America. And as this transition happens, and we're looking forward to Hoko's vibrant leadership and care. I think one of the things that we appreciate in the Sokan's office so much about Hoko is she gets things done. But she doesn't just get things done, she gets things done with care. We could say gets things done well, but it's more than that. It's really her heart of care for things, which shines through everything she does. And so I don't know how you guys, is it called luck? Or was it hard work? I'm not sure, but thank you, Hoko-san. So Soto Zen we celebrated the 100th anniversary of Soto Zen in North America last month with a number of ceremonies at Zen Shuji in Los Angeles, and then we had a big Jukai last November. And both of those were really wonderful, and they put us all in the mood of thinking about how about the next 100 years? If you think about 100 years, it's not so long, really. But think of everything that's happened in the last 100 years since the establishment of Zen Shuji in Southern California. When we think about the Dharma, one of the common images that comes to mind is it's like a tree. I was sitting down in the chapel earlier, and if you look up at the stained glass, there's really beautiful, and it's a tree. And so Sanshinji, if we think about the Dharma as a tree, Sanshinji is right down here at the roots, with a deep connection back to our Japanese tradition, and flowering, growing and flowering here in North America, sending off seeds. And so it will be that way over the next 100 years. It needs to be that way. It's part of my job to see that it's that way, to keep the connection, to keep our mutual accountability. But as I was sitting there looking at that tree and thinking how beautiful it was, and often I like to visit churches, and when I sit in the churches, I love it. And then I start thinking, how is the temple different than the church? Like, it doesn't, I love the church, but also it always feels just not quite my home, even though I grew up Christian. And I was thinking, okay, maybe it's not so much a tree. Maybe it's more like a bamboo grove. And if you think about how bamboo spreads, the root system is different. It's not, there's one root system, and then the trunk, and then the branches, and there's kind of the stable singularity of the tree. In a bamboo grove, there's this completely menacing network of rhizomes. And I say that because I had to take some bamboo out at our place in Oregon, and it took me unbelievable amount of time to pull out all the rhizomes. And so that's a very different and kind of mysterious and hard to grasp phenomena. There's this vigorous network of kind of like rough characters underneath the surface. And it creates this mat. Everything's connected. And then these beautiful bamboo comes up. And so our temples, maybe our individual selves, our teachers, we have that visible face, of this beautiful stalk of bamboo coming up. Well, hopefully beautiful. But there's something else. There's this mat. There's this vibrant rhizome network underneath. Maybe that's a little more like the jeweled net of Indra, where everything is reflecting each other. And I think this is what we really need in Soto Zen. I think this is more our tradition, more than the tree. It is this kind of motley crew that keeps everything going. And so in that sense, Sanshinji is very close to the root. But I think we don't need to think about just branches and flowers and seeds and hoping that the seeds turn into another tree. We can think about this network that's already here, of all of the students practicing diligently and keeping a connection with the whole Soto Zen world. Of course, the scholarship, the translation, the teaching, the temple, those are all important. Those are all like the bamboo. But the life of practice here is like that mat of roots. And let's keep doing it together.
Thank you, Aja. That was wonderful. If I could invite Hoshin up, who's been here from the beginning of Sanshin, and as Hoko always says, since Buddha was a boy.
Thank you. I'm looking for my notes here, so. It's kind of interesting that Ajo brings up the bamboo. When Bob Meadows, who was the architect who designed the Sanshin building, found a piece of property next to a piece of property that he owned, had bamboo on it. And I think he probably thought this would be a great place for Sanshin. It was that action that actually, I think, the fact that we were actively moving towards building something, doing something, that invited Hojo-san to come here. And I always feel fortunate around that, and to have the different talents that we had all together. Bob Meadows and his skills, and all the talents of the priests that have come and trained here. It's been a wonderful thing. The story of Sanshin before Sanshin is kind of interesting. It's really my story too, because I kind of started sitting when I was in high school, a long time ago now. It was all fits and starts. In about 1990, I was going through a weird and rough patch in my life, and I just started to sit again. And I vowed to sit for a couple of years. I vowed to sit for 1 year every single day. I pretty much did that. And then the next year comes, and I kept doing that. Then I started thinking about it would be great to have other people to sit with. And living in Bloomington, I thought, surely there's other folks here. There's a group here. And I somehow came across the Bloomington Zen meditation group. It was started by Sue Rhodes, who was a philosophy instructor here at IU. And still a friend of mine is Russ Skiba. And they were the two people that sat together every Tuesday at the UU church for those first few years, and still until people like me started to come along. So really it started in about 1991. And let's see, I have to see what I'm doing here. I asked Russ if he had any materials on the old Bloomington Zen meditation group. He pulled out a big, thick file. And frankly, I went through this entire file last night at about midnight, because I've had a hammer in my hand pretty consistently over the past several weeks. So just sat down and got around to looking at all this wonderful stuff that Russ had. It was such a great thing, and I know I'm going to skim over a bunch of stuff, but so meeting at the UU church, regular basis, Tuesdays, we started to spread out, went to a Methodist church. We're sitting there, sitting in people's houses, sitting at the campus ministry center. At the end of, well, before we actually got our own place, we were sitting in 6 different places. And so finally, I think it was about 98, we found an office behind the Subway sandwich shop on the town square, and set up a Zendo in there. And at this point, we had attracted a couple of different teachers. There was Taiken Yokoyama, who was Hoja-san's assistant for a long while. And then there was Miyoyo Anderson. She's the white plum portion of this, and who I followed for about 17 years before committing to Hoja-san. So we had those teachers in our background. I think our first spring retreat with Taiken happened in 1996. And it was the first thing we did where it was an overnight thing. And there's an Episcopalian ministry camp called Waycross that's out in Brown County, a beautiful place. So after that retreat, we had a thing where we connected with the West Lafayette Zen group. Hoja-san came down. We had a full weekend, and there was instruction. Taiken was there. It seems like we had about 20 or 30 people. It was probably the first thing where we really had a big get-together. In February of '98, I went to my first session at Zen Mountain Center in Northern California. It was an inter-sangha session. Hoja-san was there. I think there were several other people there. Sokan was there. It was my introduction to series sesshin. It was 7 days worth. At the point that we moved into the subway Zendo, as we called it, Subway sandwich Zendo, we set with the odors of the bread baking and the cookies and all that. There were people that were running down the hallway. There was a group of windows along 3 sides that we put butcher paper up over. And you could hear people running back and forth to the bathrooms. You hear the toilets flushing. It was our serious practice, and we had a lot of people that were really beginning to seriously practice with us. Okay, in July of '98, I took precepts with Myoyu. There were 5 of us in our group. This was the first serious commitment that we had done. I think it was Bob Meadows, 3 other people, myself. It was a nice group. It was a 7-day session. It was at Waycross again. Just very memorable for me. We also had involved in that session was John McCrae. And I don't know if you all know who John was. John, sadly, is passed now. But he was a Buddhist scholar here at IU, and he was part of the reason, I believe, that Hojo-san moved here because of his scholarship. John gave several lectures during the session that I received my Jukai at. So there's also a considerable amount of provenance within the temple that's associated with John McCrae. The older tatami mats all came from John McCrae. Our case, our big bell, was John McCrae's. There are several other things that we have that John just gave to us when we started as the subway temple. So that is all moved to Sanshin, and it continues. Somehow we do still need to make sure this provenance continues, and I know you'll make it happen. So, in 2003, the temple that we're in, Sanshin, was, as a building, was finished. We had our inaugural session on in September. It's been constant ever since then. Oops, I'm sorry. And I don't know what else to add to this. Like I say, I did this last night, late, very tired. We have had a lot of folks, and I'm seeing a lot of faces here that have come through over the years. I think of all the way back to the first 5 years. Shoria was here. What is your name? Shoju. Shodo. Shoju was here. The 5 shows, that's what I remember. 5 shows and Chico. Is that correct? Okay. So they were the first group, and it was a lively time. Lots happening. So I have nothing else to give you around all this. I know I've glazed over a bunch of stuff, and I could probably go on if I'd had a little more time to research all this. I did want to show Bloomington Zen Meditation Group. We had our own paper going out. This went on for about 4 or 5 years. Sue Rhodes, who was the original founder of the Bloomington Zen Meditation Group, was doing these along with contributions from all of us at one time or another. There was all kinds of fun stuff in these. One thing, and I thought I'd just, this, I think, was a lecture that Hojo-san gave before he came here. just sitting according to the teachings of Zen Master Dogen, probably in association with John McCrae. Taiken Yokoyama returns for fall retreat. This paper also had people who were writers. One of the things we had, one fellow wrote mysteries. His name was Brian Giggy, and just a little quip here. I'll read this and then I'll walk away. This is a book that he was writing. I don't know if he ever finished this or not, but I always thought it was cool that he's creating a Zen character within a detective mystery. So our hero, Roscoe Gott, Zen Buddhist, private eye, poet, is settling in for his morning zazen, where, despite his best efforts, the ringing of the bell almost makes him jump through the ceiling. A little goddamn bell, shiny, slightly tinny, but not even very loud. All it marks is the start of the zazen, and Roscoe is totally unprepared for it. To the casual observer, Roscoe blends in terrifically with the furniture. Back straight, full lotus, rooted in his legs. Roscoe is not only a poster boy for good zazen form, he looks remarkably like a planner. So, there you go.
Thank you, Hoshin. So now we're going to move into our panel talking about our strategic plan for Sanshin's future. So I'd like to introduce Gene Elias, who is the treasurer of our board and is going to be facilitating the discussion today.
Thank you. Good morning again. I am Gene. I'm also known as Chosan Hishin. And what I wanted to talk about just briefly is that we're here this morning to share a story with you about the past, which Hoshin's already talked about. So we're making progress with our story, which is the other thing about our strategic plan. We're making progress with it, and we'll enlighten you on that as we go forward. So it's about the past, the present, and the future. So we started writing the story in about 2019 with the guidance of a company called TDC Consulting. And the support of Stillwater Foundation really helped us, enable us to engage with TDC. We knew we had to start thinking, because we've been just going, Hojo-san's going to just do more writing, okay. But no, we had to start thinking. And we needed to start thinking about our future and where we were heading and how we were going to transform without losing the beauty and the value that we already had. And so we studied the Sanshin style, what it is, the simplicity, and yet the beauty at the same time. And so Stillwater helped fund us, TDC helped guide us, and we're very grateful to both of them for their support. Now, I could read to you the strategic plan. And y'all be in a nap mode within 5 minutes. So what I'm going to do is we're going to do this story instead. And we have our panelists here today to tell you each of the pieces of the story. The story consists of 5 parts. And Tonen's going to talk about Sanshin as a regional dharma center, which is one of the parts that is important to us as we move forward. David will talk about discuss Dogen Institute and how that fits into the plan as well. Because we've got all these things, and we need to put them together. And I think this plan is very instrumental in enabling us to do that. Hoko is going to talk about our residential program. So these, this is building blocks. It's not going to happen overnight. It's not a strategy we go, oh, there, done, okay. No, we've done it. We've already made progress, and we're keeping working at it. And keep working at it. Jeff will then talk about some of our facility needs as we move forward and how we might think about dealing with that. And finally, Mark who is our outgoing president. Mike's our incoming president. By the way, I will not be treasurer till next week, so don't ask me for money. Just give us money. No. But Mark will talk about the financial model going forward, and finally we'll follow that by a question and answer center, period, so that, because we're going to take it not at a 35,000, but probably a 25,000 foot look at this strategic plan. And then if you want to go, wait a minute, how are they going to do that? What did they say? Can you ask the question? And we'll be happy to answer it. So with that, Tonen.
No. Yes?
Now you are.
I am. Okay. I am going to talk about where we go from here, but I thought, like everybody else, I should maybe share a little story first. Assume that it's the late 1980s. I'm a lay person studying under Tozen Akiyama at the Milwaukee Zen Center. I'm on my way to Japan for other reasons, but my teacher gave me an assignment. My assignment in the late 1980s in Kyoto was to meet a young priest who had just published his very first English translation. And my assignment was to go with him to verify to a sponsor that an American person had read it in English and thought it was really good. And as you know, that was Hojo-san, Shohaka Okamura. But I've always remembered the fact that I was being dragged along as evidence. So that's my story. I'm really happy to participate in this, this panel. I hate being on panels, but nevertheless, because every story has to have a continuation. And as you know, it's not for sure, but it's what we like to think the road ahead might look like. So our long-range plan, is made up of a number of elements about where we think the future of the Sanshin Zen community might go. And as you're all very much aware, from its very, very first beginnings, Sanshin has had both a national and an international reputation and a presence, thanks to the work of Okamoto Roshi's teaching and writing, and the wonderful group of his disciples, who now lead their own Dharma groups. It's fascinating to me that our Sanshin network now offers the Dharma in 5 languages: Italian, Spanish, French, German, and English. It's a remarkable accomplishment. But if we think of Shohaku's writing and the Sanshin network as 2 legs of the 3-legged stool that would bring us real stability, it came to our group that we had to think about an obvious 3rd leg. And that's Sanshin's growth as a Dharma resource within its own local and regional geographic area. We had a long-armed stretch, but maybe originally not quite so much locally. So our intention is to increase our support of the small sitting groups, individual practitioners, within roughly a 200-mile radius of where we sit today. That takes us into pieces of, Kentucky, Ohio, Illinois, and we can offer them a gift of our particular Soto style of practice. They may not come here to live, and yet we are something they can depend on. At least that's our hope for the future. So I'm happy to report that this is not just all a dream. We've made some first, I think, small but very significant steps toward this intention. And step 1 has been the focus on the development of an active local Sangha with participation that has grown steadily for within about a 2-hour radius of here. We have more local members on our board. That board has now developed a diversity and inclusion policy, and I think very significantly an ecological and environmental approach, an immediate result of that approach is that we've begun to make friends with local, environmentally friendly farmers. So, our produce is sourced locally. We know where it comes from, and it assists them as well. 50 to 75% of those who participate in our session are now from within our region. And this is a change. There was a time when it was almost entirely from out there somewhere, coming in, drawn by the power of Okamoto Roshi's teaching. But we now have a steady group that come. We have 12 to 15 people every Sunday practice who are all local. This is giving us roots. The second step in the process is that we hope to increase our support, I mentioned regionally. Right at the moment, if you take a look at our website, you're going to see a thing called resources for solo practice or for small groups. And this goes everything from Zen advice to occasionally sponsoring a teacher to come out and, offer them something. Again, this is a matter of our serving the region, not necessarily sucking the region into us for financial reasons or anything else, but to be a real service here. I think that if we can develop a really strong, stable local base, this is also going to offer a strong, a central home, I think, for our networks practice, for them and for their students, a thing that is going to tie everything together. And it's going to, I think, hopefully, offer a community of practitioners on whom Okamoto Roshi can perhaps test things out or use a bit when he's translating, a group to work with right here on a local basis. The intention is clear. We see that as the way we want to go. We want to add this third leg to give us a sort of firm dharma seat, if you will. It's going to take work. It's going to take work, time, attention, and resources. We're going to need to add additional staff if we're going to do this, to help with local programming, to provide people to go out to teach, to keep the place running. So this is a point at which I want to make a real connection between what I'm saying about our local regional practice and the residential program that Hoko's going to talk about, because the two are tied together inevitably. The residential program offers opportunities to anybody from anywhere. At the same time, they can help be in service of our local region while they're here. I really think that if we can continue, as I believe we will, to support Okamoto Roshi's writing, teaching, continue the real strength that we have seen from our Sanshin network. You're going to hear about some of their writings in a new book shortly. But if we can do those two things and then add a very strong central base that serves the people who live right here, then I think we've got something quite unusual. If you think of literary output, translations, a reach around the world in many different languages, and at the same time, an absolute resource for those who are in reach of it. That's very special, I think. So that's what my hope would be. Thank you.
Hello, everybody. I'm David Thompson. I'm on the board of directors, and my portfolio as part of the board of directors is taking care of Dogen Institute. And I'm very, I can't express how grateful I am to have had this opportunity to talk to you about Dogen Institute, because it's something that is part of my life. And what I want to talk about today is really the past, present, future of DI. I'm going to talk more this afternoon in detail about Dogen Institute, but I'm going to put it in terms of the strategic plan now, and just those three topics: past, present, and future. So Dogen Institute really has three kind of general functions. You know, the first one is really supporting the creation of material. Right? So we do that in several ways. One of the main ways we do that is in the support for the Genzo-e events. And we've been sponsoring the Genzo-e for a while. It's not that Genzo-e wouldn't have happened without DI, but having a place where the support functions come together, you know, is really important for the experience of the Genzo-e, both for the participants and for the people who are generally supporting it. I mean, we all know that in the Zendo we have positions, and those positions support the practice. It was the same thing with Dogen Institute and the Genzo-e. You know, in order to support the Genzo-e as we do it now, which is really largely online, you really need people who understand what they need to do in order to support the lectures, in order to support the times of online Zazen. So in the past, we heavily relied on volunteers to do that. And what we found is by identifying these roles, by soliciting people to volunteer for these roles, and in some cases, by actually creating a paid position within Sanshin for these roles, the whole experience can be much more seamless. And it is something that then supports the practice. I mean, ideally, you do not see that support mechanism. What you experience is the Genzo-e, you know? So this is one of our challenges as part of DI, you know, is to support the community, both the local community, right, who provides a lot of the support, logistical support for things like Genzo-e, but also it's in service to a much wider community, and the wider community meaning literally worldwide. So this is so that's the kind of past. You know, a lot of people working very hard to produce Genzo-e. The present, where we're now broadcasting or streaming Genzo-e, right? And then the future, I mean, Hojo-san has given his last Genzo-e, but in the future, you know, now we're making our plans for the next round, which will be our 10-day retreats. Right? But without this infrastructure, without the people and the support that we need in order to pay those people, we can't do what we do now. So this is, again, it's something that's invisible, but it's something that's important and supports our practice. So I'm making it visible today. You know, and one of the things to think about is how do we individually support that practice? So so that one aspect then is that, so that's the personnel practice. Another piece of that personnel practice is how do we support our books, right? So in the past, we had a lot of individual, what's called heroic effort, if you're familiar with that term, right? There's a term that's used when you talk about the maturity of an organization. Heroic effort is when people do everything in their power to get something done, but there's not a lot of organization. There's not a lot of definition of roles, and there's a little bit of confusion, a little bit of sandpaper that goes on, but it gets done. People are heroes. Well, again, I think the role that DI plays in this picture is, well, how can we support the publication of books? Now, this is not a normal problem that a lot of Sangha run into. We have a particular karma that involves a person and a lineage that produces a lot of literary output. So how can we accommodate that? How can we support the production of materials in a way that's sustainable, both for people who are here as well as people who are around the world. And I think what we've managed to do here also is identify what those roles are. We're in the process of identifying someone to take care of our production coordination, which is taking care of our websites and taking care of our other outlets where you can purchase recordings. Someone already mentioned listening to a recording today. I think it was Aja. Thank you. But again, this is a role of the DI, is to be the support in fulfillment of this interesting karma that we have of producing these materials. There's another aspect to it which I think that's a personnel aspect of it, and then I think there's another aspect of it that involves actual like technical stuff. So again, in the past, you have, oh, I hope that we will find somebody who can publish this book. I hope that somebody will put this Dharma talk on the web. So instead of hoping, we plan. We find the role, we define what's needed, and then we look for someone who's willing, to fulfill that role. And if not, we find a way that we can support that by hiring a person to do that. So we've really transformed the way we do books now. The latest book that we have on the table there really represents a complete redo of the way we produce books. I mean, Hoko was spending time laying out books. This is a great skill for a Dharma teacher to have, but it's maybe not the primary thing that we want the head teacher to be doing. All right? So with the support of the board of directors, we found a way to have that function done. And we also found a way to publish outside of the Amazon complex. So this was another goal, but it takes time, and you have to have all the technical pieces into place. So again, this is where I see DI providing the support, that benefits a kind of wider audience. There's another important piece about the actual content itself, and maybe I'll cut it after that. We all support Hojo-san's livelihood. Hojo-san produces Genzo Way. We record them. We help to transcribe them. This is DI volunteers I'm describing now. All right. Hojo-san then produces a book. I mean, so in the book that we have now, his essay leads the book off. But in other cases, we've had many of you sitting in the room who are contributors to that process of working with Hojo-san's material. So we provide the support for that. And as we transition now, my thoughts are about the future and, well, how then now do we support Hoko, and how do we support all the Dharma heirs as they produce material and as we work out our literary karma. And so that's going to be kind of my focus over the next few years, is really thinking about how we can support people within the network to produce material, and also people who are close to the network, who are in the same kind of subject matter area. And this is how I think we can really support not only people who are practicing locally, but people who are practicing across the world. So, I really appreciated working with I think I must have worked with like 50% of the people in this room at one point or another in doing this work. So I thank you, and I encourage you to continue. We'll have a great future together.
Are we still on? Yes, we are. All right, so as Tonen mentioned, my piece of this puzzle this morning is to say a few things about our residential practice. So when I arrived, I realized that in order to do my job, I really needed to study very closely what exactly was Hojo-san doing here. Like, what exactly was the practice he was handing us all to move forward? Because I think a lot of, I guess I can only speak for myself, we have a lot of ideas about what we think we see him doing and guessing about maybe what's important. And I thought, if I'm going to do my job, I really need to dig into that. And the result of that, of course, is the Sanshin style book, which is on the website. So I started that project for my own good, right? But I also realized that's information and material that other people in this community really need. Board members needed to know how to do strategic thinking, but we as practitioners and as teachers need to know what exactly has Hojo-san handed us. So as part of that process, it became clear to me that while residential practice for many years had been, yeah, nice to have someday maybe, turns out that's actually critical to the vision. So we've had some shorter and longer term stays around Sanshin, people who came from out of town, wanted to practice here for a while. It had never been organized in a really intentional, consistent way. So I said, we need to get a container around that. We need to really deeply understand. When we're offering residential practice, what does that mean? What are we actually offering? What's our intention about that? So it became very clear to me that that was really a critical thing. I could really see that now this was actually the core. It wasn't something off to the side. It was actually the core of what we needed to be doing here. Without residential practice, our activities really kind of lacked a stable foundation. That's not to say there wasn't meaning in it. That's not to say we weren't practicing well. But to really give it the kind of stable foundation, and to allude to some of the things that Tonen was talking about, that kind of stability is really important. So 1708, our building next door, known for many years as quote-unquote the dorm. 1708 stopped being a short-term guest house, as it had been for many years, that we were really only using maybe a few days in a month sometimes when guests would come for sesshin. The rest of the time, that building, we were using it for various things, but it wasn't sort of full-time living space for practitioners, right? That became the living quarters for 3 full-time residents. And we were fortunate that 3 people came along that actually could make use of that opportunity and participate in a really mature, meaningful way, because we were really building that plane while we were launching it off the ground. And those that were around will know, we were fastening the wheels on that thing as it was barreling down the highway. So it was a really kind of an interesting time. So we put together a team to describe what that residential practice would be, how things would operate. We needed to put together an intake process. Who are we even talking to? This is not an opportunity for everybody, frankly. It doesn't fit for everybody. So we really had to figure out who was the stakeholder group, right? Who are the people that could really, they were at a place in their practice where they could really benefit from that kind of practice opportunity, but also could contribute in a mature way, right? Because this isn't a one-way street. So, as soon as residents were in place, and we had these 3 very courageous individuals who were willing to take this on and develop it as we went, almost immediately I heard from people all over the organization at every level, wow, our practice, the energy here has shifted. Things have landed. This now feels like it's stable, there's a maturity. And that's not about, just in personal maturity. That's not it. It's like the community had a certain kind of maturity that it hadn't had for a while. And it was really interesting to me how these comments were sort of coming to me across the board. How much more stable, how much more robust our practice was, simply by having 3 courageous, relatively mature practitioners living there. Living on the site, being there for every practice opportunity, morning zazen, afternoon, evening zazen, all the sessions, all the retreats, everything. So it really became clear to me that this was the trellis, right, for growing and maturing the practice. Because in addition to building this meaningful residential practice, we were also now better able to support the practice of our commuters, of our visitors, right? There was something to grab. There was something to step into. I mean, use any metaphor you want, right? You arrived and you were stepping into something, and it wasn't every dog for himself, right? There was a structure. There was a trellis. There was a support, no matter what kind of practice level you felt like you were at when you arrived. So suddenly, every day at Sanshin, 6 days a week, was a full day of practice. And if you were around on the campus before that, you know, between 8 a.m. and 6 p.m., the place was a ghost town. We had the family living in their quarters, up in their quarters, which was great, but, we finished morning practice. We do our zazen, we do our liturgy, we do our soji, and then everyone went to work, or everyone went home, or went off to do what they were doing in the day. A few people might wander back in for 6:30 zazen in the evening, but between those times, there was nothing happening. So occasionally, someone would write to us or email us and say, gee, I'm going to be in town for a couple of days on a business. Can I come to Sanshin? And we would say, well, okay, but you got to know, between 8 a.m. and 6 p.m., you're on your own. There's nothing going on. Suddenly, oh my word, 6 days a week, there was practice happening all the time. Because we still had the morning and evening zazen and the liturgy and the soji, but now we had 2 work periods a day. We had 3 communal meals. We had study time in the morning, right? If you showed up at any point during the day, there was practice happening. What a great feeling, right? And those, I'm seeing nodding heads. You all remember what that was like. And suddenly that was a real shift. So residential practice really became the backbone of Sanshin's practice life. And by the way, you notice I do not say residential program. That has some connotations. I don't think that's what we're doing. Residential practice, right? This is not a program. A program has a structure and we can predict it, right? We all know our practice arises moment by moment. Who's around that day? What's going on in this moment? So residential practice really became the backbone of our practice life, and the rest of the Sangha, whether they were local, regional, national, international, could fold into that. When they arrived, there was something to step into. So Hojo-san's vision was that residents were studying 3 minds from Tenso Kyokan, right? So kind mind, joyful mind, big mind was what residents were focusing on learning as part of being a community, and manifesting something as part of that residential community. Commuters' practice was about investigating the 3 pure precepts, right? So do wholesome things and don't do unwholesome things, and try to help other beings. So those things are not disconnected, right? They're completely interpenetrated. But what I love about that is there's a place for everybody. I don't live on campus. So it would be easy for me to say, well, residential practice, that's all well and good, but there's nothing there for me. There's nothing happening for me. Well, now, wait a minute. We're kind of on the same road, but we've each got our own lane in a certain kind of way, and they're not disconnected from each other. So, neither of those kinds of practice is better than the other. Residential is not better than commuter practice. It's just a thing that has some particular characteristics. So, we practice according to our karmic circumstances. What container are we finding ourselves in? If I happen to be a commuter today, there's a way to practice meaningfully. And if I happen to be living on campus, even if I'm camping in a tent for a few days, there's a way to do that, right? If you're a temporary resident or a full-time resident, that's all meaningful. So all those pieces start to fit together. So by now, everyone's going to be aware here that we're giving up 1708. As of July 17th, our lease is up there, and we're moving out of that building. That also means, of course, that we've paused our residential practice because we have nowhere for residents to live. I'm pretty sure nobody wants to camp in the yard 12 months a year. So we now have nowhere for residents to live. But that doesn't mean that our residential practice up to this point has not been meaningful, right? So in addition to just the moment-by-moment benefit of practicing together, we've learned some stuff. So we're considering this time, this year and something of residential practice, as a pilot, and we're taking what we've learned from that so that if at some point we have the resources we need, the facilities we need, the human beings that we need, we can start again. And we can start again in a really intentional way. So when we put together the residential practice to begin with, we made use of the things we had. We had a building, we had a practice, we had some people around, and we said, let's make use of what we have and try to investigate what a residential community would be like. And that was successful in a lot of ways. And the good news for us is now when we start again, we take what we've learned. We just had an exit meeting with all the residents just the other day. We take what we learned and we say, okay, if we were starting from nothing, which we kind of are in a good way, if we were starting from nothing, what elements would we include? How would we build that to have the best fit with Sanshin style? Because there's lots of residential practice around and it's great. We have an opportunity to do something like really specific, right? We offer something that you can't find everywhere else. That's why people keep coming here for Sanshin. There's tons of Sanshin around, and it's wonderful, it's meaningful, it's deep, wonderful Sanshin. And Sanshin style that we've inherited from our immediate three ancestors is a very particular thing. So I want to make sure that our residential practice is not out of line with that, right? So we have the consistency and we know what we're doing. So we get the opportunity at some point, I think, coming out of this strategic plan, to start again in a of what we're doing here. Inevitably, we've got to scale back for a little while. I'm going to lose basically all my labor. So there's no way we're going to do 10 Sanshins and retreat a year. We know this is Sanshin's calendar. And the ironic thing about the story that Hoshin was just telling, when he gets to a certain point and says, I don't have anything else to say, reminded me of an early conversation I had with Hojo-san. I said, I want to put together a timeline. It was long before this event. It was probably for the 15th anniversary. I want to put together a timeline of Sanshin. He said, well, we got established and we did our first Sanshin, and then we got a building, and it's pretty much hasn't changed since then. Right? And that's right, in a way. We've had lots of practitioners go through, but the calendar has been the same. We've always done the 10 retreats and Sanshins. We know what happens on what month, right? And that doesn't change. And we've just steadily been going forward with this practice day by day, month by month for all these many years. So this is a point in our life as a community where we need to match scope with resources. And I'm sorry, I come from government. I come from nonprofits and government. And I want to do that because I want to take care of people's well-being. We all know sometimes it's heroic effort, but that can't be our life every month. It can't be our life all the time. And I just know, because I know a lot of my brothers and sisters here have been around where, there was a lot going on and we didn't have the opportunity to match scope with resources. So we need to do that. So we've been talking a bit about scaling back the calendar, doing a few things and doing them well, rather than doing a lot of things and doing them kind of hanging by a thread, where people are just burned up by the end, right? So Sashin's not going away, Precepts Retreat is not going away, Son of Genzaway is coming. I call it Son of Genzaway because I don't know what we're going to call it. It makes people laugh. So none of that is going away. And it's not unrelated to residential practice, because residential practice is a real set of resources for that. Not just who's cooking the meals and ringing the bells, but just having what I learned long ago from Zuiko. She used to say, well, come to Sashin and lend your spirit. And I went, yeah, hearts and flowers. And then I figured it out. She was absolutely right. When you've got a bunch of really solid practitioners in a Zendo, something magic happens. And I'm not a magic world person, right? So it's not just about doing the work. Yeah, work practice is important. And it's also like, how are we just supporting each other by being in the Zendo? So with 1.5 FTEs, namely this one and a part-time event coordinator, how much can we actually do? We cannot do 10 Sanshins and retreats in a year. So we're going to have to scale back a little bit. We also probably can't continue the volume of work practice that Hoshin's been leading for about the last year. When you get to the building, when you get to the open house, come in the front door and then put your teeth back in your mouth, because this man has done an incredible amount of work. I'm so proud of what that place is like, and I think you will be too. It really feels good, right? Really feels good. But, we can't keep it up. This one, he needs a break, right? So we need to think carefully about scope. So I anticipate sort of embarking on what I'm calling Sanshin 2.0 with a quiet phase. And I think that's really kind of appropriate, partly because after this weekend, we're all going to need to rest. But I think it's important to take a step back and take advantage of the fact that we do have some strategies. We have a fabulous board, very engaged, very thoughtful. We have a wonderful community, locally and nationally and internationally. And I think this is the time to step back and really concentrate on core activities and build that strong foundation in the region that Tonen's been talking about. And then, if and when more resources become available, probably that means first facilities and then people, but hey, you bring me people, I'll take them. Then we can increase our activity level little by little. We bring back the residential practice. We started with 3 residents. We'd like to be at 6. My feeling is if we have 6, we really have a solid community. 3 is okay. 3 is workable. Ask any of the residents that are here, and they will tell you they've been going flat out for a while. 6 feels more wholesome. It feels more healthy, right? It feels more like a community and not like 3 people living together in a house. It's great because they're family now, man. They're bonded. I hope, I think. So we all agree that residential practice, and by all I'm saying, I think joint leadership, right? Board members and practice leadership, we all agree that residential practice is a key element here, but the circumstances and the timing have to be right. So stay tuned. It's coming back, right? Okay.
Well, good morning, Sanshin. Good morning, Sanshin. Well, it's a special kind of good morning from my perspective because it's good morning to locals and to people who have been locals and to people who are in the region, as Tonen was describing, and to people from around the globe. It's amazing. I'm relatively new to Sanshin. I'm on the board, and I continue to be astounded by what I've discovered was here in Bloomington, which is much like coming to Bloomington as an outsider and discovering how much is here. Looking at Yael, your performance and discussion last night was a reminder, because of course I still associate you in some way with the music school here, and this is a place where we're sort of accustomed to world-class activities, and Yael, her performance and as an individual was the reminder of that. Truly, just amazing. And Sanshin is that way, and having the people here who we have. So as we started to hear about the history of Sanshin, it was founded by Hojo-san, of course, and he, according to the name that he selected for Sanshin, it was begun officially as the home for the 3 minds, for the magnanimous mind, and parental mind, and joyous mind. And when I came under the spell and into the vicinity, I heard new words, of course, in what one practice leader referred to as Zenese. But one of the words, it wasn't really Zenese, but that was familiar to me, but I realized had a special meaning. We've heard this morning, actually, the word container being used. And that was one that I started to appreciate more and resonated to, because by its origins, it's a word that, broken down in English, contains meanings of can, or as in to know how, can do, and to hold. And I think this is significant for my little talk because I'm talking about the container, the physical container, and coming from the point of view that the 3 minds know no bounds, but to live and flourish and develop and be maintained, they need a container or containers. And that's why I wanted to talk about, within the context of our plan, our vision and our aspirations for facilities. And I hope you'll get the idea that this is a realistic but essential plan. It's not overdone, and I don't think it's underdone as well. So I'll describe the plan quickly, and then leave lots of room for questions when we have a time for discussion. So the plan is simple, but surprise, surprise, it's complicated because it's full of interdependencies, as simple as it might be. But the top of our list, and our first efforts will be to provide a new home for the Okamura family that keeps Hojo-san with us in Bloomington. Ideally, I think from his perspective, it would be a new home from which he could walk to his library and his workplace, and continue with the scholarship and some of his teaching and all the ways that we've heard in the plans. And we'll talk a little bit more about it, but that's our first priority. When that happens, then what is now the top floors of the building that comprises Sanshin, that space, which has a residential vibe, will be transformed into the residence, the home for the residents. At its opening, as is, it can easily accommodate and appropriately accommodate 3 residents. Hoshin, in his insights, knows that with, I'm sure minimal isn't minimal, but with accessible rearrangements and renovation, it can hold 6, the very 6 that you've heard about, and that's why it's meaningful and exciting. So we'll then have a home for the residential program, a container for it. And I'll just add, as I go along, I can't overemphasize the value of the residential program from my perspective as I'm sorry. I'm usually very good about being correct. For the residential practice, it's been a dream for the rest of us to have it. And Hoshin's nodding because it is a source of some work, expertise and energy and time, really, really important. But in every way it is. So the Okamura residence then creates or recreates the space for the residential practice. Amazing for us. And then next on the list would be a Zendo. And that's especially meaningful, I think, in my view, at least, of the long-term plan, and my view is derived from all the discussions that Hoko was describing, would be a place to begin to have a repository and a place for Hojo-san's library, growing library, and for the Dogen Institute and its resources and some of the technologies that are necessary to do the amazing things that the Institute has been doing and will continue to do and expand. So what is now the Zendo would become the physical space, and a very beautiful space that would, I think, in which all the Dogen Institute activities would flourish. It's really been, will turn out to be a remarkable investment of the efforts that you've done, Hoshin. So we would then aspire to have a Zendo. And we can fit it onto the ground. There was going back to Hoshin's talk about Bob Meadows, that was part of the original plan. There's a footprint, a potential footprint for a Zendo. And that Zendo would be important because I think it wouldn't be a basement. It would be on the ground, not underground. And that would be beautiful and wholesome and helpful. It also would mean it would be accessible. And the Zendo as it exists now, the best we can do, it's not a place that's accessible for all people who want to come physically to Sanshin. And I think for it to be a welcoming, functional space, it has to be accessible. And we don't need a steep staircase and narrow hall and tiny bathrooms. And it's very, very important for a proper place. It would also have a container for the tenzos. And there would be a kitchen. Again, Sanshin feeds us, but so do kitchens. And it's a good combination to have. So I think that's the quick outline of the plan. And as I said, it is full of interdependencies that we have to proceed. I think if we proceed from the beginning as I've described it, all of a sudden you see it. Everything opens up, and then we can continue to move forward that way. The only other thing I think I should add right now is that these plans also include an aspiration to make this new version of Sanshin's container meet the current dreams of environmental stewardship and proper materials and energy sources, and to be a model for the Bloomington community and for others to adhere to those important values. we'll use the discussion period to fill in. Thank you.
All right. Thanks, everybody, for all of this. This has been a great panel to be a part of, and it's been a great event to be a part of. And so my job is to talk about the financial model. So obviously, everything that we've talked about leads up to one of our key goals in all of this is to be able to ensure that Sanshin is a self-sustaining organization throughout the long term. We need to build the Dharma community that we need to build, and there are a couple of obstacles in that way. So, David talked a lot about Genzo A, which has been a good source of revenue over the past several years. We're not going to be able to rely on that source of revenue for a while. We also are in the works of trying to take care of the Okamura family as they have taken care of the Sangha. We need to support Hoko as she has always supported the Sangha, and invest in an accessible and inviting place for people to practice the Dharma. So this obviously comes with a lot of challenges, but one of the things that we can all do today is work towards some of that goal. And so first of all, I also want to say, can we give a big round of applause for Komyo and Fusatsu for all of the work that they've done putting here today? They paid me to say that. No, I'm just kidding. But one of the things that I really like, so these pamphlets that we have right here, all of this book, this is a really good book, and you should get to the end of it. It's actually, the ending is actually really makes this book come across. So on this last page right here, if you want to pull it out, take your time. You can pull this out if you like. Yes, right there. Absolutely. Yep, that's it. So one of the things, it actually makes a really good pairing with something that might be in your pocket right now. If y'all have a phone that has one of these little cameras on it, then it actually takes you to a page where you can sign up to be a sustaining donor to the Sanshin Zen community. And for those that are following along at home, we can also provide a link there as well. So I think this is really important because we've talked a lot about community. And the best way that we can ensure that we are a sustainable community operating in the long term is that we can rely on our community to move us forward. Yes, we are going to seek a lot of opportunities to raise funds. We're going to be embarking on a capital campaign in the very near future. But throughout the remainder of this year and moving forward, what we really want to work on is building monthly donors to the Sanshin Zen community. This is something that is what will ultimately help us ensure that we can end the year with a positive balance and allow us to create the space so that we can really fulfill a lot of the ambitious projects that we have put before us today. And so at the end of this year, by the end of this year, we hope to raise an additional $25,000 that will put us in a great position to start the annual campaign fund. We can get to 10% of that goal at least. I think right now, today, if you want to be able to, again, this back page right here, again, really great ending to a book. Like one of the best endings to a book. And the phones that you have in your $5 a month, $10 a month, $20 a month, $50 a month, $100 a month. You can keep going high. There's no donations too small, but also not too big. And if you're not comfortable with becoming a sustaining donor, we won't turn away a one-time gift as well. We give you permission for that, of course. And one of the things is, it also you can. I just got a brand new sticker. It says, "I'm a Sanshin sustainer." We've got a whole bunch of these. You know how cool you will be if you walk around wearing one of these on your shirt through the rest of the week? This would be absolutely something that would be, we would be indebted for you. Of course, we realize that times are tough for a lot of people, and we also recognize that a lot of people spent a pretty penny just getting here today. So I want to take time to acknowledge a lot of what people have already done, and also just acknowledge that your practice is an offering in and of itself that we absolutely treasure. That said, everything that we've heard today and everything that we're doing moving forward, the best thing that we can do from a financial perspective to really have each other's back, to support the Okamura family, to support Hoko, to support the Sangha, is if we could bring some of our resources together to contribute to Sanshin, preferably as a monthly donor. We would be most grateful for that offering, and I would be happy to talk to anybody after this about becoming a monthly sustainer and to being able to wear this really cool green sticker that I'm wearing today, and I know that you're all envious of. It's gonna be the new fashion trend of the weekend. So so I'm going to leave make my comments particularly short, but just to leave this knowing that the monthly contributions, this is going to be the key basis for our financial model moving forward. It's not the entirety of it, but it will be the basis of all the things that we have moving forward, and we would be grateful for your generous support today. Thank you so much for being here, and look forward to talking to you all throughout the rest of the weekend. Thank you.
So hopefully you've seen the 5 parts of what's going on. And as Hoko has said, the residential process, the residential is the fabric that's holding it together. And there's all these other pieces we need to put together to make that happen. And with your help and support, we can get that done. One of the things I think that is important to note is that the transition that we've made as a result of the proof of concept that we did relative to the residential process is that we used to be 50 or more % from donations, and that had dropped to 15%, whereas programs supported by the residential process became 50%. Our anticipation is to grow the program, but we need a building block, and that's what the residential process is all about. So we can grow that part and maintain your dependency, thank you, and to keep the other part going, and that we can really now get through a transitional period without sacrifice. Well, we're going to sacrifice, but my point is that we need to take care of the Akamuras. That's the important part, and that's our goal right now. What we have done in the past is that whenever we had any surplus, we pushed it into what we considered to be what's called deferred compensation, and that as soon when Hojo-san really retires, because he's not retiring, come on. We call it stepping back, I call it stepping forward. And he's going to move forward with us and to help us do this with his scholarly work, the books that we talked about, some of the lectures that he'll keep doing through the retreat program that we're looking at. So he's stepping forward, come on. So that's what we're looking to do, and we think that this program that we have, not program, but programs that we're going to have and need to keep having, needs the emphasis and support of the residential process to make it a reality. So now with that, yes, you may.
I'm live? Okay, I just want to stick in something. I just proudly put one of these on, and I think it's important for us to understand that being a sustaining donor is practice. It is Zen practice. Every month when I make that donation, I think about the Dharma and what that money is supporting. And I realize that it's my connection to the Dharma here. So I get really tired when people say, I'm interested in the practice. What's this money stuff? The money is practice. And I can't emphasize that too much. It's just as much as sitting zazen in the morning is remembering that all the people that are bringing us Dharma teaching and all the buildings and the places need support. They don't just happen magically. So I wear this little thing very proudly. I live hundreds of miles from here. but I'm practicing here because of this little badge.
Thank you.
If you are already a sustainer, you can up your level of giving. That's also allowed. Just to be able to put that forward.
So what we want to do now is open it up to any, because we gave you the 25,000 foot look, the 35,000 foot, well, hopefully it's 25,000 of the 5 parts, and they're built in modules, and we're already on our way with it. Meaning, as I mentioned earlier on, it's not going to be, hey, Monday we're done. No, no. One of the things Hoko and I had a discussion about not long ago, this is a 13-year process possibly. You know what, we've got to get there. So, with that, questions? Well, that's okay, I mean.
So I am wondering about, I didn't hear anything about what kind of support the Okamura family would be getting going forward.
That's a good question. What's the support the Okamura family is going to get going forward? We've got a tent erected in the backyard. It's just beautiful. No. We had opportunities early. Can I, then maybe Mark, you want to address that? No, I got this one. So, and Mark, let me take the first pass and you can do the second pass. Is that okay? Yeah, so last July, we were looking at a specific plan and that we should have somehow executed. Unfortunately, the environment that we live in, Bloomington, has not suffered like a lot of communities because of the increase in the interest rates, has not suffered any reduction in prices. In fact, they're going up substantially in Bloomington, even with all the construction that's going around here. Coupled that with the increase in interest rates, kind of messed us over really early on. So we're now in the process of kind of revisiting that and looking at how we can move forward with that. So there is, quite frankly, there is no specific plan. A vision of what has to happen, meaning find the Okamuras someplace where they can set up their home, not an apartment, an attached home, where within easy walking distance, as Jeff laid out, within an easy walking distance from the current Zendo. That's the vision, and I think we're getting closer to it. And in fact, in the next month or two, I hope we all come to a consensus on the board about how we can attack that. I'm sorry? Oh, Broadport, yeah, we also have what's known as a deferred compensation. It's also known as a rabbi fund. I prefer deferred compensation. Basically, it's allowed by the IRS, and whenever in the past we have had an excess revenue period, meaning our revenue is here, our costs were here, excess revenue, we've taken a portion of that and placed that into this deferred compensation. It's now in the order of somewhere around $40,000. The nice part about it is it's tax deferred, meaning we don't pay taxes on it. When Hojo-san really retires, which is going to be a lot of years from now, and we will keep adding to it as we get more monies coming in than our expenses, it'll become his, tax-free. He won't have to pay taxes on it. We don't pay taxes on it, and it's his, tax-free full. So that's the concept to help them financially once we stop paying him, meaning he literally retires. We're going to keep paying him because we want him to work for us. Does that help? Thank you.
Yeah, so I think one of the key points there is that, Hojo-san is, since he's not retiring, he's moving to a founding teacher role, will still be employed by Sanshin, will still be part of Sanshin, will still continue writing will continue writing books, will continue being of support to Sanshin, and Sanshin will continue to support the Okamura family, and they currently have the house at where the temple is sitting right now. And eventually we'd love to find them a new home, preferably not in the basement of a subway or anything like that. But so our support for them is ongoing, and it's and this is a process that we're going to continue to engage with the support of our community, local, national, and international.
By the way, that subway is now a smoke shop somehow. Anyways, any questions more? Yes.
Yes.
On that, the Abbott's Fund, is that 40,000, is that separate from the Abbott's Fund? And how, well, there's a way to contribute to his retirement.
Right. So what we do is we take that, and the board makes a decision every year to see where we are financially, and that's applied to his,
So how much is in that now?
well, that's the 40,000.
Oh, that's the 40,000.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. Does that help?
Do you have any dollar figures on the other aspects? I mean, I know there are lots of moving parts, but there's something in me wants to know, okay, buy a house, well, that's for the Okamuras, totally renovate, build Zendo, establish a residential program. I mean, I know that what we had was a free residential program, and there was a theory that people would pay for it, but what would it cost to have it be free? Because, anyway.
Mark, you want to address that, or you want me to? Go ahead.
What would it cost for the residential practice to be free for 6 people? So one of the things I think is important, Tonen mentioned that we included a diversity inclusion statement. One of the things that not just came out of that originally was an ecological approach, but also an aspiration not to turn any way due to lack of funds. And this is something that we've been able to use to support the current, some of the current residents. We do ask people who are able to fully provide their funds to fully do so. If we get to the point in which we can fully subsidize people's stay here, we would love to do that. But we have to also keep in mind that these are aspirations. And aspirations, like our vows, they're things that we keep having to work toward and work toward and work toward. I don't know exactly what a cost would be to fully support residents. I know that we have a lot of goals that we have to get in order to get there first. And so there's a lot of different figures that we can take a look at. And so these are going to include everything from whether or not we're going to be renting a place versus buying, versus what kind of materials that we're going to use. And also, what is inflation going to be looking like 1 year from now, 2 years from now? One of the things, we've seen a little bit of a decline in donations over the past couple of years, and I was talking to our esteemed treasurer yesterday and mentioned that is pretty much on par with almost every nonprofit organization nationwide, because as inflation goes up, people have less take-home money to donate. And so we have to, so a lot of these are very difficult. I can give you some numbers that we've thrown around. I'm a little bit hesitant to do that because we use these numbers for budgeting purposes, and it could look so much different in a year. But buying a house, we're in Bloomington, you're not, it'd be very difficult to find something for under $300,000. And so we're having to leave all options open in terms of what sorts of housing options that are available as well.
Does that help? Yeah. Yes, I'm sorry.
I'm Dario from Rome. I've been training here in Sanshin since 2010. I done my Hosenshiki here, so my orchestra here, having my temple here. So I consider Sanshin as my mother temple. And I wonder, and my dream is if in the future I can send my training monks in Sanshin to have a Shuso Hango and a Hosenshiki. Because in Europe we are a kind of problem. There are quite some temples, some Tokubetsu-jin that they can have Hosenshiki, but there are so many training temples and training monks, and this temple have a lot of people to have Hosenshiki. So I should go to beg to other teacher, please, can my student, my monk have Hosenshiki? So my dream is I can send, of course I belong, our temple belongs to the European Sokambu, but I don't know if it's a problem. But my dream is I would like to send my training monks to train Surso Hango and to have Hosenshiki in Sanshinji.
Thank you. Yes, ma'am.
Talk about that. So, interestingly, that's kind of been a topic that's on our minds a bit because we just finished last week Hosenshiki for my deshi from Austria. Sitting right in front of him is our resident from Germany, who right now is under my care, but she's probably going to another of my Dharma descendants. So it occurred to me as we were preparing for this Hosenshiki, this was kind of a strange thing, because this was the first time we'd ever done Hosenshiki for someone who was not Hojo-san's direct deshi. So, to me that says this is another step in our maturity as a community. Hojo-san's handing this thing down, and we're carrying it on, and now we're in the next generation and the next generation. The challenge for us going forward is, Hojo-san had to be in charge of this Ango because I'm not qualified yet. So I said, please would you be willing to take care of my student for the purposes of this ceremony because I'm not qualified to do that. So this board is very aware, because I've been talking about it for a little while, that that's a circumstance that we just need to think about going forward. I know Hojo-san would like to give away that responsibility as soon as he can. It's a bit like the situation we had in Milwaukee. When I came to take care of the practice in Milwaukee, I wasn't even transmitted yet, so Tonen had to stay on the books nominally because she was qualified to do everything I wasn't qualified to do. So we do want to continue to be able to offer authorized Ango, authorized Hosenshiki, for many of the reasons you've described. We have a worldwide network, and not all of our brothers and sisters are in places where it's easy to do unauthorized Hosenshiki. There may also, I hope, be some felt desire to do that within our Dharma family, within our Dharma style, because we do a very particular thing, right? I'm looking around at all of you in rock suits with rings, and I'm not, right? And there's a reason for that, and we can talk about all of that, right? You'll hear about that from Yuko tomorrow. Let me just prime the pump for Yuko. Okay, so there is a short to medium term plan to figure out how that qualifying happens, but the intention is to continue to make that opportunity available. Because I'm already looking at even my own Dharma descendants at this moment are all in Europe. Having said that, some of you have also heard from me. I really want to make sure that we support the European part of our network to pour its energy back into developing the European part of the network. In other words, I don't want everyone to think this is the only resource in town. Because now I've got brothers and sisters who are mature enough that you're ordaining your own people, you're qualifying your own people, and I don't want the default to be, oh, we're going to go ordain at Sanshin with Hoko. I want them ordaining with y'all, all y'all, because I want them supporting your sanghas in your cultures, in your languages. I was recently visiting my students in Germany and Austria, and intellectually I knew before I got there, their practice was different from mine. And yet, we tend to say there's Japanese practice and there's Western practice, and these two are like two big monolithic things. And even though intellectually we know that's not the case. And so when I arrived in Europe, I was a week in each place, so I wasn't there very long. And it completely reinforced my understanding that not only is my practice in America not the same as the practice in Europe, the practice in Germany is different from the practice in Austria. And that was really a helpful insight for me, because I'm continuing to work with all of my brothers and sisters around the Sanshin network, and I am now no longer assuming that my practice looks like yours, or that yours looks like his, or that his looks like hers. So while I certainly want to support the network to continue to credential people, I also want to support the European sanghas in their own development. I want to support the South American sanghas in their development, and not to just assume that what we're doing here is like the only thing happening. Does that make sense? This is not about cutting anybody off. This is not about dividing us up. This is about, I want to plow that energy back into helping you develop what you need to develop, which is not the same. Like, we're interconnected, but it's not the same. You have needs in your areas, in your cultures and countries and languages that are different than this. I don't necessarily understand them completely. I'm not necessarily the best resource for that. So, right, I want to continue to develop our maturity as we go down the generations by being available, but not being the only thing that's available. Does that make sense? Okay, any follow-up for that before we, oh, look at this going on. I'm gonna, Gene, you're facilitating, not me.
Yep.
Yeah, maybe Ajo can answer this. We both are part of the North American Soto Show. Is it possible from Europe Soto Show to make Hosenshiki in North America and get registered by Soto Show?
Yes. That's the short answer. The long answer is make sure that you keep in clear contact with the regional offices that you're part of. Everything that we do is to facilitate the registration back to Japan. So what happens at your local office, you will have your, this is just the Japanese Soto Shu side of things, you will have your registration as a priest. It's kept somewhere. So for Japanese priests, it's oftentimes kept at their home temple. That's where it's placed. But then if you live overseas, it's kept in the Sokan-bu of that area. So that's fine, but anything that happens there, it goes back to the central office and gets recorded there. So make sure you stay in contact and make sure that people have it through. And then sometimes it's confusing if your registration's in Europe and you're doing some activity here, so we just have to keep the communication clear. And I also wanted to comment that speaking on behalf of the Sokan, the Sokan's office is, in huge support of how do we keep people registered with the Japanese institution. Not everyone's going to do that, so how do we keep connected even when we're not registered back to the Japanese Soto Shu itself? And we want to work hard to see that our family stays connected. It's not so hard as long as you know, as long as you know where your registration is.
Yeah.
Moving target. Okay, show the head.
Oh, there she is. Hi.
I did not know that you could not do an authorized Hosenshiki. What needs to happen before you can?
I believe it's $2,000.
Yeah.
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 So Hoko is a kokusai fukyoshi, and so she has the capacity to hold what's called a kessei ongo. That's the kind of ongo that you have to have a hosenshiki that will be recognized by the Soto Shu. So I know she's very excited about wearing a red koromo, and so yeah, so you apply for that, and then you don't have to wear the red robe, but there's a little button that comes with it. So once you pay the $2,000.
Which kind of points up an interesting thing. I mean, here we have all these things we want to do, and each step is going, oh, not more money. Come on, I'm the treasurer, man. Come on. You have a question here?
Thank you. While I was taking a little walk yesterday, I was able to find a beautiful little bumblebee or bee on a flower, and so the picture unfolded, the flower gives freely, and the bee just takes what it needs to sustain and gives the rest back to his hive or her hive. And so the flower and this beautiful kinship, the flower and the bee, they are sustained by the whole world and contribute to the whole world. And while this picture would fit to everything of your panel speakers, I will direct my question related to David, because it's so wonderful that so many teachings are available. And so as far as I understood, but I don't know, I think it's a kind of non-profit thing, or very little profit, to give these books and teachings and everything. And I wanted to know if you have qualified lectors, if someone gives a teaching to you, a book, and if you have technicians to help you with your work.
Oh. Yeah, that's right. Sorry.
Thank you, Jinryu. So I can talk about this a little bit. We look at I'll talk about it from the financial aspect first and then the people aspect. So from the financial aspect, Dogen Institute, really, I look at it as two streams. One stream is income and expenses that are associated with holding the events, the retreats. And for that, there are real support across the community. So, and especially in the now, since we have them online, there's a larger opportunity for more people to attend them, and there's more income that comes from them. So that income is one stream, and that's really of benefit to the entire Sanshin community. We look at the books and recordings and the websites and all those expenses and profits as a little bit separate. And our goal there is we want to at least break even, maybe make a little bit of money, maybe 1 year not so much, but over time we want to absolutely break even. And we're actually plus right now. So, and that includes, hiring the technicians that we needed to do the book that's sitting on that table over there. So, and this was a key piece because it fits in not only with our ability to spread the Dharma, it fits in with our ability to support Hoko in her position. As I said, it's great for a head teacher to have those skills, but I don't think it's 40 hours, 80 hours, 180 hours of the head teacher's time to format a book. Right? So we've established this new model, and I'm very optimistic that we can sustain it. So I think that there is a way to do what we are doing now and to continue doing it into the future. We will need some support, to do that, and we do appreciate donations because they do help defray some of the costs. There's one other piece regarding that's pretty important that I will talk a little bit more about this afternoon, and that's our archive. And that's a digital archive of recordings of Hojo-san and Hoko and other of you, really, as you come through Sanshin. And, a physical archive. Like when Hoshin, this morning, he's not here, talked about a file of original material. When we think about Hojo-san's library, these are precious assets that we will need to preserve over the long term. Now, it's tied in the facilities plan, but believe me, I will come around holding up a smart little sticker that's going to say, I support the Sanshin archive. So.
I have a question, or just a thought. So I love that there's, all these European folks and South American, and but there's also our Japanese and Japanese American, Dharma siblings and community and everything, and I'm not sure if there's anything to say right now, but when we're talking about what people are doing and how they need to be supported and how everybody's connected, I just would like to be a little bit more like everybody, because I don't always know, what my Dharma siblings are doing when then they go back to Japan. I'm like, what's it like there? Because I've never studied there, and I just want that to be part of the conversation.
Do you want to respond?
I agree.
Great point and important observation. Thank you.
I will get to you finally.
Thank you very much. Thanks to everyone who's been planning and working for these 20 years, and the family, and you, Sensei. So, pardon my ignorance, but of the languages that are represented here today, are there translation projects as well for Dogen Institute, for example, in Spanish? It would be very welcome here, even in this country.
Okay, so the question was about translation activities. So, first of all, Hojo-san's not done, A. So, and I should ask a question. Are you asking about translation activities from Japanese into English or from English into multiple languages or both? Okay. Okay, good. So, Hojo-san's work will continue, and so there will be continued, material that's produced over time, into English, because that's part of the mission is making the bridge between knowledge that resides in a foreign language, in a foreign country that not a lot of people in the West can speak, right, making that available. But then there's another leap that has to happen, and that's the leap into another language. So, in the book here, we have other languages already represented in that way. But part of Dogen Institute is also supporting people in their own efforts to get published. It's pretty hard for American facilities to get published in France, in Spain. I mean, these are difficult. There's market conditions. But what we can do is we can help facilitate the process. And I've worked with people in this room to do exactly that, where we help to make the connections between publishers, to kind of smooth out, the trajectory. And we have in the past sponsored a couple of translations too. I hope we can do some more of that, going forward. But the 15-year anniversary book, we have translated into two other languages now. I think 2 other languages now. So, if people are interested in that, they should be talking to me.
So, David, you might mention on your website all the other languages.
Oh, yeah. So on our DI website, on the book page, publications page, you will see all the books in the various languages that are either produced by us or produced by Dharma heirs, so that they can be found in one site. Yeah, we're trying to reflect that international flavor and support the whole network.
Okay. Well, thank you very much. I want to thank my colleagues and my friends for helping us here today. We will be around for one more question. Okay. No.
I'm just wanted to respond to Iris' proposition about how Japanese are practicing in America. So I'm originally from Japan, and then I lived in New York for about 30 years, and I practiced in Brooklyn Zen Center for, 10, 15 years, and then I didn't realize, so I never practiced Buddhism or Zen in Japan, and then so I only knew American Zen. So when I first came to Sanshin, and then practiced with other, Sanshin community, I realized how different American Zen and then, the Hojo-san style, Antaiji style Zen, and then it's completely different. And then, so I'm not saying, the Brooklyn Zen is bad, or, I'm not disparaging anything, but it's just different. And then, so now, and then I understood how Hojo-san wanted to Zen to develop slowly in outside of Japan. So I wanted to understand what he meant, and then probably slowly understanding what he meant, but I can't really explain how or what. But that's how I am learning right now. I've been here for 1 year, so my understanding is very little. But slowly I understand little by little. And then probably like a Jisho-san or other person who practice in the Japanese, Senmon Sodo as Japanese, probably can tell a little bit of her story, maybe directly to Iris, because maybe we are running out of time. Thank you.
Again, whoa, sorry about that. Thank you very much. And like I said, we're going to be here. If you have any other questions, feel free. We'll be glad to get down into the weeds with you.
All right, well, thank you, panelists. Thank you, Gene, for facilitating. Thank you, Ajo and Hoshin. I think that was a great discussion, and I appreciate what everyone said, but Tonen and I particularly appreciated what you had to say about giving being practice. I think that's so important. What we do here is a holistic thing. Sitting is very central, but it encompasses all of this, including giving. And if we're part of a community, if a community means something to us, we should contribute back to that community. So we're at the top of the hour now. It's 11 o'clock, or just after 11 o'clock. We're moving into a break time. We have no scheduled things for the next hour. Lunch will be at noon. We're going to have a buffet set up. So for the next hour, we don't have any programming. You're welcome to stay here. We will have some of the food out. But we are downtown. If you want to get coffee, there are a couple coffee shops. If you need to go back to your hotel or anything, do what you need to do. So we'll release you to that. Thank you so much. Oh, and yes, one more thing. Please look at the Mayumi Oda piece. Please buy tickets. We will be... Yes, buy 2 or 3 or 4. The more tickets you buy, the more chance you have to get it. So, now we'll release it. Yes.
When is lunch at noon? When is lunch?
Yes.
We're free, but we have about an hour.